Welcome to Managing Scrupulosity. My name is Father Tom Santa. I'm a Redemptorist priest, and I've been working with people who suffer with scrupulosity for almost 30 years. In addition to working with scrupulous people, I have also been a retreat director and a teacher in the Hezekiah School of Spiritual Direction in Tucson, Arizona, which I initiated about 20 years ago with a group of dedicated men and women who were devoted to the ministry of spiritual direction. The school has trained many spiritual directors in the years since the original program was instituted. And in the process, some things have changed, some perspectives have been fine-tuned, some subjects were discarded and replaced with other subjects that seem to be more relevant to the clientele that we are serving. All of this would be the usual ebb and flow of a dynamic program and a positive indication that it is responsive to the needs of the people that it hopes to serve. One component in all these years which has never been changed and remains the central focus of the practitioners of the Hezekiah School of Spiritual Direction is this: the firm belief that the Spirit of God is the primary director in the exchange. Each person who is engaging in spiritual direction, either as the official director or as the person who's being directed, each person must have their ear tuned clearly to the movement of the Spirit of God. Spiritual direction is not catechetical training. It is not the place for the exchange of opinions or perspectives. It is the place where the Spirit of God directs, heals, calls, and ultimately enables the spiritual growth and development of each person in the relationship. It is an experience of discernment, listening, and on occasion recognizing a particular path for spiritual growth that seems to be present and necessary. There is a practice skill that is necessary for good spiritual direction to take place. The practice skill is the willingness to patiently listen to the movement of the Spirit, how the Spirit calls, forms, directs, and invites a person into a deeper relationship with God. In the process of listening and discerning, what is most often revealed are not necessarily the particular steps that a person needs to take in order to progress, but rather the specific barriers and obstacles to grace that have hindered, or sometimes even makes impossible, real spiritual growth. For a person who suffers with OCD, in particular the religious manifestation of OCD, which is commonly identified as scrupulosity, the single most significant barrier to spiritual growth is anxiety. Often people who suffer from scrupulosity believe that the barrier is sin. It is most certainly not sin. It is the anxiety about a false perception of sin that hinders their relationship with God. This false perception is destructive, effectively depriving a person of the experience of being in the present moment, the place where God is present at all times, the eternal now, as the saints might say. Scrupulosity, the anxiety that it produces, is consistently propelling a person into an unknown future with the fear of eternal punishment due. If it does not propel them into a fearful future, it repels them into the past with the fear and anxiety of something has been incomplete or which needs to be repaired before they can be truly forgiven or truly loved. Scrupulosity feeds on anxiety. When anxiety is not present, it effectively identifies an intrusive thought, which, by the way, all people experience, as the instrument that is most useful to produce the anxiety that it requires. It effectively uses the anxiety and the language of sin to identify the intensity of the feeling which has been generated in reaction to the intrusive thought, as the preferred way to keep the person in a perpetual state of never being fully present to the moment, being deprived of the experience of the present moment, the eternal now. This deprivation is a great spiritual wound, and the wound can only be healed by the Spirit of God. When a person seeks spiritual direction as part of their healing process, and as a necessary step to learn how to manage the disorder, the spiritual director will gently lead you into a discussion about your life, your family of origin, your spiritual practices, the frequency of the reception of the sacrament of reconciliation and the sacrament of the Eucharist. Other subjects will most certainly emerge as the discussion continues, in particular, the specific manifestation of your experience of scrupulosity. All of this takes time. It cannot be rushed. In the process, the spiritual director will gently offer some particular directives that will be immediately helpful to you. Over time, the significant barriers to the grace of God will be slowly brought out into the light, and the healing power of God's grace and love will shine upon them. Spiritual direction is most often encouraged on a monthly basis. At the beginning of the process, meeting weekly for a period of time may be necessary, but eventually the process should develop into a pattern that is most helpful for you. There is no one pattern for everyone. Every need is different, and the process is particular to your spiritual life and journey. Spiritual direction will be complemented by other medical and psychological helps, including but not limited to the correct prescription that will help you balance your anxiety and the necessary therapy that will support your healing. These are not the same for each person. Some people will have developed a useful practice that already effectively supports their mental health, and they need spiritual help and direction to complete the healing process. Individual spiritual direction is not helpful for everyone. It is dependent on the place where you find yourself on your spiritual journey. If you are unnecessarily combative with direction, struggle with the assertion that your scrupulosity is not about sin, or resistant to any kind of suggestions or directives about your particular spiritual practices, it's quite possible that individual direction would not be helpful. If you are unsure that spiritual direction would be helpful, an introductory session may be required, or you may find that the experience of group spiritual direction may be more helpful for you at this point in your spiritual journey. The introductory video on group spiritual direction would be appropriate for a first step. Regardless of your decision, know that all of us at Managing Scrupulosity and all those wonderful men and women who take part in any of our offerings are praying for you. We all understand the real struggle that this disorder brings. May God bless you this day and always.